The gunshot echoed through the frozen valley like thunder, and Kestrel Voss dropped flat against the snow-covered ridge, his rifle already sliding into position. 3 years of running from bounty hunters had taught him that sound meant death. Was close, but this crack hadn't been aimed at him. Through the swirling snowfall, he spotted the smoking barrel of a rifle pointed down at a figure collapsed in the white drifts below. "Please," came a woman's voice, raw with desperation and cold. "I have children waiting. They'll freeze without me." Kestrel's jaw tightened. He should keep moving, keep climbing higher into the mountains where no lawmen dared follow. The smart play was to let whatever drama unfolded in the valley below sort itself out while he vanished into the wilderness. But when the rifle bearer, burly man in a sheriff's coat, kicked the fallen woman hard in the ribs, something hot and violent surged through Kestrel's chest. "Where's the gold, Marlena?" the sheriff snarled, chambering another round. "Husband stole it before he died, and I know you know where it is." The woman Marlena tried to push herself up from the snow, her dark hair matted with ice and blood. "Told you I don't know anything about any gold." "Caspian never told me." The sheriff's boot caught her in the shoulder, sending her sprawling. Again, liar. $3,000 in Confederate gold doesn't just disappear. Maybe watching you freeze to death will help your memory. Kestrel was already moving down the slope before his mind caught up to his body. He'd sworn off playing hero after it had landed him with a price on his head. But watching a man torture a woman in the snow wasn't something he could stomach. Not anymore. He made it halfway down the ridge before a loose rock betrayed him, clattering into the silence. The sheriff spun, rifle swinging toward the sound, but Kestrel was already diving behind a fallen log. The shot splintered bark inches from his head. "Who's up there?" the sheriff bellowed, working the bolt of his rifle. "This is Sheriff Garrett. Show yourself." Instead of answering, Kestrel rolled left and came up firing. His first shot took the sheriff's hat clean off his head. The second put a hole through the badge on his coat. The third would have taken his heart if the man hadn't thrown himself behind a boulder. "You picked the wrong day to play Good Samaritan." "Friend," Garrett shouted. "I've got 6 deputies coming up the trail behind me." Kestrel glanced at the woman in the snow. She was staring at him with eyes the color of winter sky, and something in that gaze made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. Blood stained the snow around her, and her lips were going blue. "Can you run?" he called to her. "I can try," Marlena whispered back, struggling to her knees. Another shot cracked from behind the boulder, and Kestrel ducked. 6 deputies or not, he was committed now. Well, the woman was going to die if he left her, and despite every survival instinct screaming at him to run, Kestrel Voss found he couldn't walk away from those desperate blue eyes. He'd come down from the hills for her plea. Now they'd have to survive together, or die together in the snow. Marlena's fingers were too numb to grip the rocks as Kestrel hauled her up the steep slope, but she forced herself to climb anyway. Behind them, Sheriff Garrett's curses echoed off the canyon walls as he scrambled to follow their trail through the deepening snow. "There's a cave up ahead," Kestrel grunted, his breath coming in white puffs as he practically carried her over a fallen tree. "Can you make it that far?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to be strong, but her legs gave out as soon as he let go of her arm. The world tilted sideways, and she found herself staring up at his face, singular and weathered, with scars that spoke of hard living and harder choices. Dark eyes that should have been cold as the mountain air, but burned with something fierce and protective. "Who are you?" she whispered as he lifted her again, cradling her against his chest this time. "Someone who should have kept riding," he muttered, but his arms tightened around her. "Someone who's probably going to get us both killed." The cave mouth appeared through the snowfall like a black wound in the mountainside. Kestrel carried her inside, and the sudden absence of wind felt like stepping into a warm room. He set her down gently on a bed of pine needles someone had left behind, then moved to the entrance to watch for pursuit. "My children," Marlena said, trying to sit up. "I have to get back to them. They're alone in the cabin, and if I don't return, how far?" Kestrel asked without turning around. 2 miles down the valley. "But you don't understand," Sheriff Garrett will. "I understand plenty." Kestrel's voice was grim. "Your husband stole Confederate gold, probably during the war. Now Garrett wants it back, and he figures you know where it's hidden." Marlena stared at his broad shoulders, at the rifle he held with casual competence. "How did you know about the war?" "'Cause I was there." He glanced back at her, and she saw something haunted in his dark eyes. "Different side than your husband?" "I'm guessing, but we all bled the same color in the end." She studied his profile in the dim light filtering through the cave mouth. There was something familiar about him, something that tugged at memories she'd tried to bury. "You're him, aren't you?" "It's the ghost of Shiloh. Kestrel Voss." His whole body went rigid. "That name's dead. They say you killed 20 men at Antietam. That you could put a bullet through a silver dollar at 300 yards. They say a lot of things." Kestrel's knuckles were white where he gripped his rifle. "Most of them lies." Marlena closed her eyes, remembering newspaper stories and wanted posters. The most dangerous sharpshooter in the Confederate Army turned outlaw after the war ended. $3,000 on his head, dead or alive. "Why did you help me?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Wind howled outside the cave, and somewhere, in the distance, she could hear Garrett shouting orders to his men. Finally, Kestrel spoke without looking at her. "'Cause I've seen too many good people die while bad men prospered. Because I'm tired of running from who I used to be." He turned to face her then, and the raw honesty in his expression made her breath catch. "And because when you called for help in that snow, you sounded like every prayer I never thought would be answered." Tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. This dangerous, hunted man had risked everything for a stranger's plea, and now they were both trapped in a cave while armed men searched for them in the storm. "The gold," she whispered. "It's real. Caspian did steal it, but not the way they think." Kestrel's eyes sharpened. "What way?" "He saved it. It's from a Union patrol that was going to murder a family for it. He died trying to return it to them." Marlena met his gaze steadily. "I know where it is, Kestrel, and if we can reach it, we might just survive this." "You're bleeding," Kestrel said, crouching beside Marlena in the cave's dim light. The makeshift bandage around her shoulder was soaked through with crimson. "It's not deep," she lied, though the bullet graze burned like fire every time she moved. "We need to think about getting past Garrett's men." Kestrel's hands were surprisingly gentle as he examined the wound, and Marlena found herself studying his face in the amber light of the small fire he'd built. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights, and a scar along his jaw that looked like it came from a knife fight. But when he looked at her, something soft flickered in those dark depths. "Tell me about the gold," he said, settling back against the cave wall. "The real story." Marlena pulled her torn shawl tighter around her shoulders. Caspian was writing dispatch for General Lee when he came across a Union patrol outside Richmond. They'd cornered a family the Hendersons and were demanding gold. The family had hidden from raiders. When the father said he'd already spent it on medicine for his sick daughter, the patrol leader ordered his men to shoot them all. Kestrel's expression darkened. "So your husband intervened. Couldn't just watch." Caspian killed 3 of them and scattered the rest, but not before they'd shot Mr. Henderson. The man was dying. Caspian, to take the gold $3,000 in Confederate coins and get it to his sister in Colorado Territory, said his family would starve without it. But the war ended before your husband could make the trip. Marlena nodded. By then, he was wanted for desertion. We ran to Montana Territory, changed our names, tried to build a life. But Garrett tracked us down 6 months ago. He was one of the Union soldiers who escaped that day, and he's been hunting the gold ever since. Outside voices echoed through. The storm. They were getting closer. The children you mentioned, Kestrel said quietly. Are they yours? My sister's. She died of fever last winter, and Caspian and I took them in. Twins Raven and Phoenix. They're only 7 years old. Voice broke. They don't know about any of this. They think their uncle Caspian died in a mining accident. Kestrel was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. Where's the gold hidden? There's an old mine shaft about a mile north of our cabin. Caspian buried it at the back of the tunnel, marked with a cairn of white stones. She met his gaze. I was trying to retrieve it when Garrett found me. I thought if I could get the gold to Mrs. Henderson's sister like Caspian promised, maybe his death would mean something. and now Garrett will torture those children to make you talk. The words hit Marlena like a physical blow. She tried to stand, panic flooding through her. I have to get back to them. I have to. Kestrel's hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. We'll get to them, but not by walking into Garrett's trap. Then how? Desperation made her voice crack. He has 6 men, and we're trapped in a cave with a blizzard coming in. Kestrel's smile was sharp as a blade, because Garrett made one mistake. He thinks he's hunting a grieving widow and a lone outlaw. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face, and Marlena felt her heart stutter at the tender gesture. He doesn't know he's up against a woman brave enough to risk everything for her family, and a man who's finally found something worth fighting for again. The voices outside were closer now, and Marlena could see torchlight flickering through the snow. But when Kestrel looked at her like that, like she was something precious worth protecting, she almost believed they might survive this. What's the plan? She whispered. Kestrel checked his rifle and moved toward the cave mouth. We give Sheriff Garrett exactly what he thinks he wants, and then we teach him why some ghosts should stay buried. The torchlight grew brighter, and Marlena heard Garrett's voice boom through the storm. Voss, I know you're in there. Send out the woman, and maybe I'll let you die quick. Kestrel's laugh was cold as winter wind. Come and take her, Sheriff. If you can? The first deputy never saw the shot that killed him. He dropped into the snow 20 feet from the cave mouth, his torch hissing as it hit the white drifts. In the sudden darkness, Kestrel's voice rang out across the mountainside. 5 left, Garrett. Want to try again, you son of a bitch? The sheriff's voice cracked with rage. That was a good man. Good men don't torture women in the snow, Kestrel replied, already moving to a new position inside the cave. He'd spent the last hour arranging loose rocks and pine branches to create multiple shooting positions. And now, the defensive preparations paid off. But feel free to send another one forward. I've got plenty of bullets. Marlena crouched deeper in the cave, her heart hammering as gunfire erupted outside. Muzzle flashes lit the snowfall like deadly lightning, and the sound of ricocheting bullets filled the air. But even in the chaos, she found herself watching Kestrel with something approaching awe. He moved like liquid shadow, firing from one position before sliding to another, making it impossible for Garrett's men to pin down his location. There, one of the deputies shouted. Left side of the cave. Kestrel's rifle spoke from the right, side instead, and another man's scream cut through the storm. For left, Kestrel called out conversationally, as if he were discussing the weather, but Marlena could see what he couldn't from his. Position 2 deputies were working their way up the slope to the right, trying to flank the cave. They moved carefully, using the trees for cover, and they'd be in position to attack within minutes. Kestrel, she whispered urgently. 2 men, coming up the right side. He spun toward her, and for a moment, his dark eyes met hers across the firelit cave. Something passed between them in that instant trust, recognition, something deeper that made her breath catch. Then he was moving again, fluid and deadly. The flanking deputies never had a chance. Kestrel appeared at the cave's right entrance, like an avenging spirit, his rifle barking twice in rapid succession. Both men tumbled into the snow, and suddenly the mountainside was quiet except for the wind. Just you and me now, Garrett, Kestrel called. Your boys are all dead. Last chance to walk away. Go to hell, Voss. The sheriff's voice came from behind a boulder 50 yards down the slope. I've been tracking that gold for 3 years, not walking away from $3,000. Marlena pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the fire in her wounded shoulder. It was never yours. She shouted toward the boulder. That gold belongs to a family in Colorado. My husband died trying to do the right thing. Got its harsh laughter echoed off the canyon walls. Your husband was a deserter and a thief. When I'm done with pretty boy Voss there, I'm going to pay a visit to those twins of yours. See how long it takes them to tell me where Daddy hid his treasure, are the words. Hit Marlena like a physical blow, but Kestrel's reaction was even more violent. His whole body went rigid, and when he turned to look at her, his eyes held a cold fury she'd never seen before. He just made his last mistake, Kestrel said quietly. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Kestrel set down his rifle and drew. a long knife from his boot. The blade gleamed in the firelight, and Marlena realized with a chill what he intended. "Kestrel, no, he'll kill you." He moved toward her, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, his calloused hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "Some men need killing, Marlena, and some women need protecting." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I've been running from who I am for 3 years, but I won't run from this." Before she could protest, he was gone, melting into the storm like smoke. Marlena pressed herself against the cave wall and listened to the silence outside. Minutes passed. Then she heard Garrett's voice, much closer now. "Voss, you out there, boy? Getting cold feet?" The answer came not from Kestrel's voice, but from the sound of steel meeting flesh. Garrett's scream cut through the night, high and desperate. Before it was abruptly cut off, when Kestrel emerged from the swirling snow 10 minutes later, his knife was clean and his eyes were calm. He didn't speak as he gathered his rifle and began kicking snow over their fire. "Is it over?" Marlena whispered. "It's over." He looked at her then, and she saw something new in his expression, but possession. "Time to get. You back to those children?" The cabin appeared through the pre-dawn darkness like a haven, its windows glowing with warm lamplight. Marlena's legs nearly gave out with relief as they stumbled down the last stretch of snowy trail, Kestrel's strong arm the only thing keeping her upright. Her shoulder throbbed with each step, but the sight of that golden light made every step worth it, Aunt Lena? The door burst open before they reached the porch, and 2 small figures raced into the snow. Raven and Phoenix, dark-haired twins with their mother's green eyes, threw themselves into Marlena's arms with such force that she staggered backward into Kestrel's chest. "We were so scared," Raven whispered against her aunt's neck. "You were. Gone all night, and there were men with guns asking about Uncle Caspian." Phoenix, always the braver of the two, peered up at Kestrel with curious eyes. "Are you the one who brought Aunt Lena home?" Kestrel knelt in the snow, so he was at eye level with the boy. "I am, and I'm going to make sure no one ever scares your family again." Something in his voice, a quiet certainty that brooked no argument, made both children nod solemnly. They seemed to sense they were in the presence of someone dangerous, but utterly trustworthy. "Inside, all of you," Marlena said, herding her small family toward the warmth. "Before we all freeze to death." The cabin was small but cozy, with handmade furniture and children's drawings tacked to the walls. Kestrel stood awkwardly in the doorway as Marlena bustled about, checking the children for injuries and stoking the fire. This domestic scene felt foreign to him after years of sleeping rough and eating cold beans from a can. "Sit," Marlena commanded, pointing to a chair by the hearth. "That wound on your arm needs tending." Kestrel glanced down at his torn sleeve, surprised to see blood seeping through the fabric. He'd been so focused on getting Marlena to safety that he hadn't noticed. Garrett's knife had found its mark during their final struggle. "It's nothing," he protested, but Marlena was already pushing him into the chair with gentle but implacable hands. "The twins can sleep through anything," she said, glancing toward the loft where Raven and Phoenix had disappeared. "But they'll wake up screaming if they see you bleeding all over their kitchen." Her touch was soft as she cut away his sleeve and cleaned the wound. Kestrel found himself studying her face in the firelight, the determined set of her mouth. The way she bit her lower lip when she concentrated. The dark lashes that cast shadows on her cheeks. "Why?" she asked quietly as she wrapped his arm with clean bandages. "Why did you risk everything for strangers?" Kestrel was quiet for a long moment, watching her careful hands. "I had a family once, a wife and daughter. They died in a fever epidemic while I was off playing war." His voice was rougher than usual. "I've spent 3 years running from that failure, from the man I used to be. But when I heard you calling for help in that snow, ... He met her eyes. "I couldn't fail again, not when it mattered." Marlena's hand stilled on his bandage. "I'm sorry about your family. They wouldn't have wanted me to become what I did after. Wouldn't have wanted me to spend years hiding in caves and killing men for money." Kestrel caught her hand in his, marveling at how small and soft it felt against his scarred palm. "But maybe they'd be proud that I finally remembered how to protect someone who needed protecting. And now," Marlena's voice was barely a whisper, What happens now? You're still a wanted man, and I'm still a widow with 2 children and no means of supporting them. Hey. Kestrel's thumb traced across her knuckles. Now we go get that gold. We take it to Mrs. Henderson's sister in Colorado, like your husband intended. And then, ... double quotes. He hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Then we figure out what comes after, if you want there to be an after. Marlena's eyes searched his face in the flickering light. What are you asking me, Kestrel Voss? I'm asking if you think a ghost can learn to live again. If a woman brave enough to face down armed men in a blizzard might be willing to teach a broken-down outlaw how to be the man he used to be. For answer, Marlena leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his. The children will need a father, she whispered. And I've discovered I need a man who'll come down from the hills when I call for help. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside the little cabin, something new and precious was taking root. Something worth protecting. Something worth building a life around. The mine shaft yawned like an open mouth in the hillside, its entrance partially collapsed from years of neglect. Marlena held the lantern high as Kestrel cleared away loose rocks and timber, his movements careful but determined in the cramped space. There, she breathed, pointing toward the back of the tunnel, the white stones. The cairn was exactly as Caspian had left it, 5 smooth river rocks stacked in a careful pyramid. Beneath them, wrapped in oiled leather, lay a small wooden box that felt impossibly heavy in Kestrel's hands. 3,000 in Confederate gold, Marlena whispered as he opened the lid. The coins gleamed dully in the lantern light, each one stamped with the seal of a dead nation. Caspian used to say it was cursed money, stolen from the dying. That's why he couldn't bring himself to spend it, even when we were near starving that first winter. Kestrel closed the box with a soft click. Maybe that's why Garrett went so far off the rails, hunting it. Gold has a way of poisoning men's souls. They made their way out of the mine in comfortable silence. But as they approached the cabin, Kestrel noticed Marlena had gone very quiet. The twins were playing in the snow outside, building what appeared to be a fort, and their laughter carried. On the morning air? Second thoughts? Kestrel asked gently. Marlena shook her head. It's just ... Once we take this to Colorado, once we fulfill Caspian's promise, it's really over. The old life, the running, all of it. She looked up at him, and I don't know what that makes us. What we are to each other now. Kestrel set the gold box down in the snow and turned to face her fully. The morning sun caught the highlights in her dark hair. He thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful than this woman who'd survived so much and still had room in her heart for hope. I know what we are, he said, taking her hands in his. We're 2 people who found each other in the middle of a storm. 2 people who've learned that running from the past is no way to build a future. He brought her fingers to his lips. Mary. Me, Marlena. Her eyes widened. Kestrel, I know I'm not much of a catch. A wanted man with blood on his hands and no prospects beyond the clothes on his back, but I love you. I love those children in there who've already started calling me Uncle Kes. I love the way you make this old cabin feel like home, his voice roughened with emotion. I want to be the man you see when you look at me, the man who deserves your trust. Tears sparkled in Marlena's eyes, but she was smiling. Yes, she whispered. Yes, you impossible, wonderful man. Yes to all of it. The kiss they shared tasted like snow and new beginnings, and when they broke apart, Kestrel felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the absence of fear. For the first time since the war ended, he wasn't looking over his shoulder, wasn't planning his next escape route. He was simply a man in love with a woman, planning a future. Uncle Kes, Aunt Lena. Raven came running through the snow, her cheeks bright red with cold. Phoenix says we're going on an adventure. That's right, sweetheart, Marlena said, scooping the girl up. We're going to Colorado to visit some people, and then ... She looked at Kestrel with eyes full of love and promise. Then we're going to find somewhere to make a new home, all of us together. Phoenix appeared at Kestrel's elbow, tugging on his coat. Will there be horses in Colorado? I imagine so, Kestrel replied gravely. And wide open spaces where a boy can run without worrying about getting lost, and no more bad men with guns? Raven asked from the safety of her aunt's arms. Kestrel's expression hardened for just a moment as he thought of Garrett and his men, now buried under the Montana snow. No more bad men, he promised. Not while I'm around to stop them. As they walked back toward the cabin to pack for the journey, Marlena leaned against his shoulder. Do you think Mrs. Henderson's sister will be surprised to see us? I think she'll be grateful to finally hear her family's story. To know that good people still exist in this world. Kestrel adjusted his arm around her waist. And I think when we ride away from there, we'll be riding toward whatever comes next, whatever we choose to build together. The small church in Cedar Falls, Colorado was filled with wildflowers and the sound of children's laughter. Marlena adjusted her simple white dress, the finest thing she'd owned since before the war, and smiled at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Through the window, she could see Kestrel in the churchyard, looking uncomfortable in his new suit as Raven and Phoenix chased each other between the headstones. You ready, dear? Mrs. Henderson's sister, Dorothy, appeared in the doorway. Elderly woman had wept openly when they'd arrived with the gold and Caspian story, and she'd insisted on hosting the wedding at her own church. The reverend's all set, and your young man looks like he might faint if we keep him waiting much longer. Marlena laughed, the sound bright with happiness. He faced down 6 armed men without breaking a sweat, but the thought of saying vows makes him nervous. Good sign, Dorothy said with a knowing smile. Shows he takes marriage seriously. Through the window, Marlena watched as Kestrel knelt to help Phoenix tie his shoe. The transformation in him over the past 2 months had been remarkable. The haunted look was gone from his eyes, replaced by something calm and steady. He'd put on weight, started smiling more, and the children adored him. More importantly, he'd started believing in his own capacity for good again. Mrs. Whitmore? Raven appeared in the doorway, practically vibrating with excitement in her new blue dress. Uncle Kes says to tell you he's ready to marry you now, and can you please hurry up because Phoenix ate too much cake and might be sick soon? Marlena burst into laughter. Well, we certainly can't keep the groom waiting for that. The ceremony was simple and perfect. Kestrel's hands were steady as he slipped the plain gold band bought with honest money from his new job at the lumber. Milanta her finger. His voice was clear and strong as he promised to love and protect her family for the rest of his days. And when the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared tasted like coming home. Did you ever imagine? Marlena whispered against his lips as rice flew around them. When you came down from those hills, I never imagined I'd be this lucky, Kestrel replied, his arms tight around her waist. I thought I was rescuing you. Turns out you were rescuing me. The celebration continued into the evening with fiddle music and dancing under the stars. Kestrel proved surprisingly graceful as he waltzed with his new wife, and later took turns spinning the twins until they collapsed in dizzy giggles. Dorothy had outdone herself with a feast that would be talked about in Cedar Falls for months to come, as the night wound down. Kestrel found himself sitting on the church steps with Phoenix in his lap and Raven leaning against his shoulder. Marlena sat beside them, her head resting against his free arm, and he marveled at how completely his world had changed. Papa Kes? Phoenix said sleepily. The title had evolved naturally over the past weeks. It still made Kestrel's throat tight with emotion every time he heard it. Yes, son. Are we going to live in our new house forever now? Kestrel thought of the little place they'd bought. On the outskirts of town, nothing fancy, but it had a good barn for the horses and enough land for a garden. More importantly, it had room for a family to grow and thrive. Forever and a day, he promised. Pressing a kiss to the boy's dark hair, Marlena's hand found his, their wedding rings clicking softly together. No more running. No more running. Kestrel confirmed. No more hiding. No more being anyone other than who we choose to be. Above them, stars wheeled across the Colorado sky, bright and endless and full of promise. In the distance, a train whistle echoed across the prairie, carrying other souls toward their own destinies. But here on these church steps, the ghost of Shiloh had finally found his peace. The outlaw who had come down from the hills for a woman's desperate plea had discovered something worth more than gold, more precious than freedom, more lasting than legend. He had found love and family and the chance to write a new story with his life. And as Marlena dozed against his shoulder and the twins curled trustingly in his arms, Kestrel Voss smiled and watched the stars finally truly home.